They came from Ireland, empty-handed but full of grit, hope, and a hunger for something more. 3 young men, one river crossing, and a name that still echoes: Irish Bend. After first settling in the Midwest, brothers Thomas and Robert Herron, along with their friend James Martin, set out in 1853 for Oregon's untamed frontier. A few years later, their younger brother, Hugh Herron, followed. They cleared the land, planted wheat, built their homes from the ground up. But more than farms, they built a legacy. It all started near a wide bend in the Willamette River. One day, a steamboat captain asked, "What's this place called?" James Martin shrugged. "I don't care what you call it." The captain smiled and said, "Then I'll call it Irish Bend." The name took hold, and so did the legacy behind it. This is the story of the Irish boys, pioneers who didn't just settle the land. They shaped it, and somewhere along the way, they helped build a community that time almost forgot. But even for pioneers, life was made of personal moments, like finding someone to build it with. In 1859, Thomas Herron returned east to get married. His brother Robert did the same, though it's unclear whether they traveled together or separately. By 1861, both were wed, Robert to Mary Wallace Neal, and Thomas to Mahala Ann Saylor. Thomas and Mahala chose to stay in Illinois. Thomas sold his share of the Irish Bend farm to Robert and closed his Oregon chapter, at least for a while. In 1862, Hugh Herron, one of the younger Herron brothers, made the journey to Oregon, likely alongside his brother Robert and Robert's wife, Mary. After setting roots in Benton County, Hugh began acquiring land, eventually expanding his holdings to 750 acres. In 1867, he married Nicey Wynn. Together, they built a home, raised a family, and shaped the land they would call their own. Nicey's story was shaped by hardship. Born in Tennessee in 1846, she lost both of her parents by the end of the Civil War. In 1865, she and her siblings crossed the plains to Oregon, orphans in search of a new beginning. 2 years later, she married Hugh Herron. This quilt, hand-stitched by Nicey around 1870 in the sagebud or goose tracks pattern, still survives as a quiet reminder of early pioneer life. In 1878, Hugh Herron was elected Benton County Commissioner. Years later, their son, Hugh Clayton Herron, followed in his father's footsteps, serving as a county commissioner, county judge, and state representative. As for James Martin, their friend, fellow Irishman, and one of the original Irish boys, he returned to Ohio in 1870 to marry Mary A. Wilson. When the couple came back to Oregon is unclear, but what is known, James claimed land, expanded his holdings, and eventually became a wealthy man in Irish Bend. In 1876, Robert Herron passed away at just 55. He was laid to rest in a cemetery north of Monroe, about 8 miles southwest of Irish Bend. 8 years later, in 1884, illness came for his brother Thomas. Despite his failing health, Thomas and his wife Mahala made the long journey west, hoping the fresh Pacific air might heal him, or at least let him visit his brother's grave one last time. For a few days, Thomas seemed to improve, riding out daily in a carriage. One beautiful afternoon, he asked to be taken to Robert's grave. Standing quietly by the marker, he said, "Here is room enough to bury me beside my dear brother." But by evening, his condition worsened. Thomas lingered for weeks, never once complaining. "I am ready and willing to go when my master calls," he said. "But if it pleases God, I would like to live for the sake of my loved ones." On July 21st, 1884, Thomas Herron passed away at his brother Hugh's home in Benton County. He was laid to rest beside Robert. 2 brothers, reunited at last. Thomas's grave stands out. In his will, he requested that his monument cost no less than $150, a considerable sum in 1884, and his wishes were honored. Robert's widow, Mary, later remarried James Barkley, a veteran of the Mexican-American War, an Oregon pioneer, and a soldier in the Indian Wars. She rests in Monroe Cemetery beside her second husband in the Barkley family plot. In 1907, James Martin, the friend who had journeyed west with the Herron brothers over 50 years before, passed away. He too is buried in Monroe Cemetery, alongside his wife Mary. In August 1908, Hugh Herron, the last of the original Irish Bend brothers, died at his home in southern Benton County after a long illness. He was 68. Hugh was remembered as a quiet, honorable man, deeply respected by all who knew him. Almost a perfect man, his sons would say. His funeral brought mourners from across the county. Reverend McCausland led the service at McFarland's chapel near Monroe, accompanied by a mixed choir singing in his memory. The chapel stood on the east side of Oregon Highway 99 West, near McFarland Road. Built in 1896 by a Methodist Episcopal Church South congregation, it was later converted into a private home before being destroyed by fire in October 1977. Hugh was laid to rest near his brothers, leaving behind a legacy deeply rooted in the land they had settled more than 50 years earlier. After Hugh's passing, his wife, Hugh Herron, began a quieter life in Corvallis. In the end, she was laid to rest in Monroe Cemetery, back among the hills and family she had long called home. Today, Monroe Cemetery rests quietly on the northern edge of town. Unless you visit on a holiday, you'll need to open a gate and follow a rough dirt road to find it. But once you arrive, the hillside unfolds gently, and the ornate scrolls and towering spires of the gravestones reveal a place deeply rooted in history. It's not the polished look of a modern cemetery, but it draws you in, to wander, to listen, to remember. This cemetery holds many stories. Among those buried here is Nancy Richardson, the first wife of Doc Aaron Richardson, the rugged Kentucky backwoodsman who led a wagon train to Oregon in 1846. Doc was known for his wild white hair, buckskin clothes, and bare shins tucked into moccasins. According to Herron family tradition, it was Doc who once refused to ferry the Irish newcomers across the Long Tom River, declaring that no foreigners were welcome here. Around the time the last of the Irish boys passed away, a small but vital ferry began operating near the land they once farmed, what is now Irish Bend Park, just northeast of Monroe. Through the 1940s, this ferry served as a crucial link across the Willamette River, connecting Benton and Lynn counties. On Christmas night in 1925, the ferry broke loose. The ferrymen and passengers scrambled into small boats for safety, while the ferry was later towed to Peoria to unload the cars it carried. Then, in January 1926, tragedy struck. Hans Rasmussen, the ferryman many would come to know well, was seriously injured when a ferry wheel snapped and struck him in the face. Unconscious for hours, he was hospitalized, and meanwhile, the ferry drifted downriver with 2 cars still aboard. In 1935, Rasmussen suffered a paralytic stroke while steering the ferry mid-river. Disaster was only averted because Arthur Lilly, a passenger, was there to take control. Sadly, Rasmussen passed away weeks later in Portland from complications related to the stroke. Life on the ferry was never easy. In 1937, a spring flood destroyed the landing on the Lynn County side, forcing a shutdown until repairs could be made. Cable failures also caused trouble. In 1938, while carrying a car, 2 of the ferry's 3 guide cables snapped, leaving it stranded midstream until a tugboat came to help. That incident led officials to move the landing sites to safer spots. After over 2 months out of service for repairs, the ferry finally resumed operations in May 1938. But by 1942, high waters washed out both approaches, forcing a winter closure, and no records show it ever returned. Quietly, the Irish Bend Ferry slipped into history. The ferry was eventually replaced by the Irish Bend Covered Bridge, a simple wooden span built in 1954 across a quiet bend of the Willamette River. For years, it carried farmers and travelers safely across. But in 1975, Irish Bend Road was realigned, and the bridge was left to decay. Listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979, its fate still hung in the balance. Then, a determined group stepped in. Benton County, Oregon State University, and local advocates raised funds to save it. In 1989, the bridge was carefully taken apart and rebuilt on the OSU campus. Though briefly delisted, it was proudly restored to the National Register in 2013, a symbol of a community's fight to preserve its past. Today, the Irish Bend Bridge stands over Oak Creek, part of a scenic trail on campus. Once a rugged frontier crossing, it now welcomes students, walkers, and cyclists, linking history to the present in every step. The bridge was saved, relocated, and restored as a tribute to what came before. But not everything could endure the passage of time. The ferry is gone, and the community that once thrived here has slowly faded away. As families moved to nearby towns and cities, old homes were torn down, and farms grew bigger. Today, only about 10 houses stand along Irish Bend Road, just a third of what once filled the land. And as the people left, so did the children. On Old River Road, just south of Hubbard Road, a 2-story schoolhouse built in 1914 replaced a one-room school that had served the community since the 1870s. Its upper floor was more than classrooms. It was the heart of the community, a stage for concerts, plays, meetings, and celebrations. In the spring of 1992, Irish Bend School closed its doors for the last time. Students were sent to Monroe, ending nearly 80 years of local education. That closure wasn't just the end of a school year. It marked the end of an era. Today, the road is quiet. The schoolhouse still stands, but its rooms are silent. Out in the fields, the work goes on, season after season, just as it always has. Life hasn't vanished. It's simply changed. Some things do fade, but others take root. In memory, in story, in the land itself. They didn't just raise barns and plant crops. They raised families, built a community, and left a legacy. Thomas and Robert Herron, their brother Hugh, James Martin, and the women who stood beside them, who held households together, worked the land, and shaped daily life in ways history too often overlooks. Then came the generations who carried it forward, and still carry it, even now. Greatness doesn't always make headlines. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in endurance, in devotion, in lives that flowed steady as the river beside them. These men and women didn't seek fame, but their lives mattered. Their labor left a mark, and the place they built still carries their name, Irish Bend. Their story lives on, in the land, in the legacy, and in all of us who remember. If you've enjoyed this journey into the past, please like, share, and subscribe. And if your family has roots in Irish Bend, or stories of your own to share, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below.